3 past 10. I would like really to welcome all of you to our second session of the IAS series that's being organized jointly with the Pakistan Academy of Science. And our speaker today is Dr. Zabta Shinwari, who got his Ph.D. from Kyoto University, and he served at the World Wildlife Fund, Pakistan, COMSTECH, before his appointment as Vice Chancellor of Kohat University of Science and Technology. And one of his major achievements is to extend higher education facilities to the neglected communities of Pakistan, especially to females. He also established the University of Science and Technology at Bannu. He is the founder of Kohat University of Science and Technology, Institute of Medical Sciences. Dr. Shinwari also served the private sector as CEO of Qarshi Research International and Vice Chancellor, Ph.D, Qarshi University-Lahore. He is a fellow of the Islamic World Academy of Sciences and fellow and former Secretary General of the Pakistan Academy of Science. He worked for IAP, UNESCO, IUCN, PBSA, and WWF. He won awards like UNESCO, Avicenna Award, and COMEST plate, and became Vice Chancellor of UNESCO COMEST. He was awarded the President of Pakistan twice, Tagma Imtiaz and Sitara Imtiaz for his services in higher education. He also got Best University Teacher Award from Higher Education Commission and got Distinguished Scientist Award by Chinese Academy of Science in 2019-2020. He remained Treasurer of Academies and Societies of Sciences in Asia, AASSA. Dr. Shinwari, please, the platform is yours.
Thank you very much, my dear friend and Director General of Islamic World Academy of Sciences. I'm really grateful to the Islamic World Academy of Sciences, appreciate their efforts, and Pakistan Academy of Sciences for organizing such events. And we were discussing informally before having this webinar that how can we extend these facilities for future too. I'm really grateful, and today I see many of my friends listening me. I'm grateful for Malik Maza and several other fellows of both the academies are there. Thank you very much. I'm today, you know, what I'm talking to you, my background is from the rural mountains where I came, and I can imagine what's happening with the people there. So what I'm talking to you is, when we talk about keywords, food security and climate change, etc. So we should keep in mind that the human, unfortunately, has several classes. So the key national and international challenges that we are confronted with, they are, for example, mass poverty and inequality. There is no doubt in the last 300 years, humans have really progressed in terms of monetarily, what we call it, phenomenal growth in per capita. Yet, we should also understand that every second 4 people die because of hunger, because of starvation and related diseases. And why is that? That is because 1% of the world population has the wealth that is more than the 50% of the world wealth that is with the lower poor community of the world that they are having. So 1% of the world is having more resources than the 50% of the world population. Number two, if you close it little more, richest 26% of the world has wealth more than the 50% of the population of the world, the bottom world. So that is, and even if in pandemic, where 99% of the world population were worse in the lockdown with international trade, and tourism, yet there were people that they got a lot of money out of the pandemic even. In this pandemic, 160 million people were pushed down to the poverty. So there is that, but if you look at the two individuals, their money, their wealth got increased by 1,000%. So that's why when we talk about these issues, we also have to consider those people that they are suffering more, coupled with environmental crisis, with economic stability and violence. This is again that data a little bit more in detail that in this last pandemic, new billionaires minted money every 26 hours, and yet the people are dying of poverty. So the world 10 richest men doubled their fortune in this pandemic. And if we look at the gender equality, so 13 million fewer women is working now than in 2019 because of several issues that are related to this pandemic, etc. So there is that, and over 20 million girls are at risk that they will not return to school back in the poor countries specifically because of these issues. So when we talk about food security, when we talk about climate change, we have to consider these issues that are there. And the inequality, when we talk about the richest 1% of the human population emit more than twice as much as carbon dioxide as the bottom 50% of the world. So the contribution to the worst climate change is because of them, they're minting money, yet, so they should contribute from their wealth. Because of them, we have wildfire, we have flood, we have tornadoes, crops are not being raised by the poor community, they don't get their, and they are also, facing hunger. So a little bit for the students, those who are joining today, we should understand when we talk about poverty, hunger, nutrition, etc. Very quickly, hunger is the distress associated with the lack of food. The threshold of the undernourishment, what we talk, if they are getting less than 1,800 calories per day, we call them that they are facing hunger. And so this is when we talk about malnutrition. So malnutrition is not only undernutrition, it is overnutrition too. Obesity is nowadays a bigger issue. So it has to be considered in both ways when we talk about food security and nutrition that we usually think. So one more, like we got this corona, we are still debating its origin, how it came, when will it end, and what is next. So when we discuss all these issues, this infectious disease problem, there are, other preventable deaths of infant mortality, etc., that are caused because of human behavior. And human behavior, when we talk about that, the three, what we call it, triad of troubles is obesity, conflict, and mental illness. Because of this risk that is also faced by the human, and changing people's behavior in circumstances is proving more difficult than fighting infectious disease, because you eat some kind of food that is not good for you, yet you are consuming. It's very difficult that you change your food habit. I was just discussing with my friend Abdullah about the SDGs related to other issues. Here I talk to you about when we talk about SDGs and the targets that we have fixed for ourselves by 2030, when we talk about food security, zero hunger, health, etc., almost every SDG is somehow related and is, talking about this food security that we are, confronted with, and we will be facing it more. If you talk about its availability, if you talk about soil degradation, if you talk about sea, the health of the ocean and the sea, this all somehow directly, indirectly linked with the food security that we have to consider. And secondly, because of all this, usually, I'm sorry to use this word, that when we have terrorism, we have some kind of Islamophobia, yet the major cause, one of the major causes, availability of resources, because the decline in world health outside the control of the individuals, war, conflict, and environmental factors. Because of them, we have refugees, and because of them, the youth, they don't have, jobs and resources. Then they are, they are easy prey for the people to use it for, you call it terrorism or whatever. And we can see in many of the countries, the recent example you can see in our neighboring countries too. Number two, one is the lack of resources, lack of availability of food. When we talk about ethics, today specifically, I'm focusing on the ethics of the humans. The other issue is the waste of the food resources, that over half of the world food is lost, and waste occurs mainly, if you look at this figure, mainly in Asia and industrialized Asia and South and Southeast Asia. Almost 50% of the food is somehow lost. It should have been used for the people if we have some kind of a mechanism available. And if you look at the top, food waste is 24%, and environmental waste is 198 million, and then financial waste, if you convert it into dollar, so it's a huge resources. And if you look, terms it in another, when you link it with the climate change, so if the global food waste was a country, it would have been the third largest greenhouse gas emitter after the US and China, because of this waste, that the carbon dioxide that you emit, food waste could have been the third major waste. But yet on another side, as I said earlier, 3.6 seconds and a person dies of hunger, and 75% of those people that they die, they are young children. So we have to understand the issues, the diverse issues that both the developed nation, they have the issues that they need to reduce the greenhouse gases to preserve the natural resources, biodiversity, etc. While for us, for developing countries, we have to produce enough food and ensure that it's available for all the people at affordable cost. So now if we talk a little more closely about the food security, it is the situation when all people at all time have physical, social, economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food, that their dietary needs are, met with. So the three major issues that still we are, since last maybe now 2 decades that we are discussing, three major issues is availability, access, and utilization. That is the three things that you have to address them if you want to ensure food security. And if you look at the figure on the right side, 768 million people in the world faced hunger in 2020. And 52 out of 119 countries have a level of hunger that are serious, alarming, or extremely alarming. So more, you can look at these, half of the world countries are really somehow confronted with the food security. And when you talk about the global hunger index composition, the dimensions and the indicator, the three dimensions are inadequate food supply, child mortality, and child undernutrition. And when you talk about the dimensions that are, it adds wasting and stunting, specifically for children, that they cannot get enough healthy food that they need for their normal growth. Now, a little bit about the climate change. You all are aware of this carbon dioxide emission in the environment, temperature, increased global temperature rise that we We expect that it will be more than 2 degrees Celsius by this end of this century if we don't take enough measure, and we are yet not taking that enough measure. We still are confronted with. And if you look at our country, I give you an example of Pakistan. We are in the top 10 countries that are vulnerable to climate change. And we have to consider more long-lasting measure if we want to confront, somehow tackle this issue that we are specifically drought that has killed 140 children in one of the province just 5 years ago. So when you discuss about the climate change and you relate this with the other issues that, human health. So there are, the severe health, injuries, mortality, pollution. Some of our cities in the winter specifically, we face a lot of problem because of smog and fog now. This phenomena has, given a lot of problem with the asthma and other, respiratory diseases that earlier were not there. Number two, we get mosquitoes that flourish more, and then we have several issues that mosquito as a vector spreads. One of the example is the dengue virus that we are having. So the change in this vector ecology because of climate change, etc., we get a lot of increasing allergens. We got a lot of respiratory issues. So on one side, when you talk about food security, on the other side, you cannot go. We closed our school not because of Corona alone, because of this smog and fog also. Because if you go outside, the environment is so dirty that you may get a lot of diseases. So we close our schools and ask our children not to go to school, specifically in those provinces, in those cities where the smog is widespread. So then, of course, we have water and food supply impact, malnutrition. Because of that, we have forced migration, civil conflict, and other issues that are related to, all this. Now, if you look at this climate change and you link with the food security, and if you look at the, food that is available, these are slides from one of my very good friend, Riaz Qureshi, who is fellow and vice president of our academy. I asked him to give me a few slides permission, and these are some of the slides. And we expect that if this temperature rises, which is rising, we will be having, for example, in 2020, we had 2% less wheat output if this because of this temperature rise. And if it rises the same way that it is rising, we will be losing close to 60% of our crop by 2080 of wheat crop. Same is true for the rice crop. We lost 12% of the rice crop because of temperature rise. And if it goes the same way, we will be losing huge crop because it needs a lot of water. And if it's not available up to that level, we will be really facing problem. So this climate change, this is a case study for Pakistan. It will reduce if we don't take measure. For example, rice yield by 16%, wheat by 13%, and so forth and so on. So we really have to take measure if we are considering all these issues like climate change and water availability, for example. This rainfall is also now the predictions. Thirdly, we have long glaciers that are reservoirs of our water, our main, streams and our rivers, they get, when the glaciers are melt in summer, we get a lot of water, and then we have a lot of crops. And now the glaciers are melting quite fast. There are two issues that are related to this. Number one, we will get less water. Number two, there are some pathogens. I warn you, pathogens that are in those glaciers. And if these glaciers melt, these pathogens will be released that were there for hundreds and thousands of years. And this will be a sort of pandemic for you that you will be really facing a lot of problems. So that is that we really have to consider climate change, and when we link it with the food security, this factor of water, temperature, and greenhouses. And if it is coupled with, because of the vector ecology change, because of the biodiversity loss, then we have problems of the biotic and abiotic stresses. So we and the government policies, because we use policy for science, but we rarely use science for policy. So the other issues that I want to put forward on the platform of Islamic World Academy of Sciences, that we should have a policy section in IAS also, and we should use science for policy, including this food security and other issues that we will be dealing with. Because if you look just one figure, 1.3 billion people in developing countries survive on fragile lands that are really susceptible to climate change, and that we will be facing problems. And you can see the global vulnerability here in this maps. And if you look at Pakistan, it ranks at 8th and 12th position, respectively, in 2011 and 2013 of climate risk index. So there is that we need to be really more vigilant, and we need to have policies that can help our poor communities, specifically that they live on fragile lands. So another issue is that so what can be done? Now, these are the issues. If we handle it properly, we can really do some thing. For example, wheat can be sown 15 days earlier. These are recommendations by some of our scientists that they think. Again, I acknowledge my friends who donated some of the data, like 25% increase in planting density in rice and wheat system, 20% more fertilizer, and so forth and so on. So you can have, some measure that can ensure in the era of climate change, the food security, specifically when I again focus on ethics of the marginalized community, of the poor communities in our country. So this is in some of the districts in one of the province, Punjab, where a study was taken, and they did how could we really help do the adaptation packages if we have to confront and if we have to understand the climate change pattern. Now, there are some good things with this, that we can understand the brighter side of the picture, that we can now predict, weather more accurately, more clearly for many days and many months now, because of the, science that we have. Like in Green Revolution in 1960, we increased per capita income because of we had some good varieties, but the other issue is, of course, population growth, etc. So now, because of the development in information technology, TV, radio, internet, cell phones, this can be used for the betterment of the even the poor people have it, so we can use this, that people can get maximum benefit of it. So, and there are some other international efforts too, like UN Framework for Convention of Climate Change, UNDP, Global Environment Facility, Climate Smart Agriculture, and World Bank is also thinking of second green revolution in Africa through soil fertility program, etc. But when we talk about equity, again, I say, for example, the whole continent of Africa doesn't have, I will call it, that they could produce their vaccine, even the whole one continent. And there are some cities in the West that in the one city, there are several facilities that they can produce the vaccine. And then, the equity issue that we have it. So if I close it down, the 10 largest countries in the world by population is another issue, specifically in a country like Pakistan. Now, we were in 2015, 109 million. Today, we are 223 million people. And by 2050, we will be having more than 300 million people. So the same, and in fact, the land is reducing. because of buildings, because of houses, and even the agricultural land is being used for the societies. And so that's another issue that we really have to think and consider when we talk about the diets. And so what we can do is, there are some recommendations that we can have some more staple foods, that they can be biofortified, they can have, more strong availability of varieties for the people. But we should understand that a diet of over 800 million people doesn't contain sufficient macro and micronutrient. 2 billion people of the world are at risk of iron deficiency, and that causes cognitive development, impaired physical and cognitive development. So that is 1.5 billion people are at risk of iodine deficiency. So these are the issues, and vitamin A deficiencies that we somehow to really consider it. So when we talk about food security, there's a lot of things. I just summarized it for you. Older people, malnourished, baby low birth weight, child are stunted, adolescent are stunted, and then women and pregnancy issues that are complicated because of undernourishment. So that is that we face a lot of problems. And this I'm again focusing on the people that are in marginalized community. If we look at the our national nutritional survey, we got a lot of issues, problem we identified already. Because of time, I will be now going a bit quick, like anemia, iron deficiency, vitamin A deficiency, etc. And this we have to aid by somehow to these deficiencies, that we could use modern technology like biotechnology, and we could have biofortification of staple crops. Another things that, for example, vitamin A enhanced rice, maize, and other species that you can remove anti-nutrients and allergens from some of the crops that can help human health. But of course, we need to have safety assessment of all these GM crops before it's publicly available, or bioavailability. That has to work, and it's already internationally in Pakistan too. We have certain measures that this can be used. So the take-home message for food fortification is that, for example, in Canada, both mandatory and optional food fortification are practiced. So the science could be used for this policy, but then we have to have caution, what we call a precautionary principle, when we talk about the GM food for these crops, that they are effective, efficient, transparent, and predictable regulatory system in the countries. And in fact, again, these policy sections, which I'm usually advocating, is that can help guide the government about the technical issues, that we should somehow promote multi-sectorial collaboration to get all these, safe measures that we talk about. One of the issues, of course, is that poverty and lack of food, macro and micronutrients, that affects the brain also. So when earlier, when the child were, being grown, so they were, if they were gone from some basic thing, then they were competing the words and they got the challenge. But now, if they, from the very early beginning, if their brain doesn't grow well, so they cannot compete with the rest of the world and there are some examples, for example, here in Jamaica, Kenya, Zimbabwe, that they are associated with poorer and stunted growth in the younger children, and then they with lower cognitive test scores and worse school achievement. So that is that it should be for everybody, and basic education is right of all the individuals, that somehow we have to help them even in school. If we could provide some good diet and food to them, probably we can help them that if children who get good supplements grew 1 or 2 centimeters taller than those in a control group. So these are studies available that we can somehow help the people to grow in the same way. So now we believe climate change is the biggest threat we face, but it's also a historic opportunity, and it's our chance to save the world. We have to help. A couple of slides of the people that they are really lack of food security, like 8 million people face severe acute food insecurity. As the reports, there are, as I said, 50 plus countries that are now confronted with all this. So in 9 out of 10 worst humanitarian crises, civil conflict was found to be the driving force, indicating a strong link between peace and food security. So this is the international global leaders. If they usually say, I wish that people should, the global leader, the wealthy leader, if they come out of this national interest to the human interest, probably we can solve more problem of the humans if we want to have a better humane world, if we think about them, that how can be this. So you can look at the example of armed conflict zones in the historically Yemen, Afghanistan, Syria, etc., that the people there, they are insecure and the food issues they are confronted with. Natural disaster too, we have data available for some of the countries, and this is where the people are, the various countries, and unfortunately, majority are Muslim countries that we as IAS also somehow could, think of a policies with these countries to help them to come out of the problem that they are confronted with, and they are facing problem. If we look at the region that we live in, Pakistan, again, this index, we are not in that good figures. Afghanistan and Pakistan, we really have a lot of people that are food insecure. So we need to really help them. One last issue that in a couple of minutes I would close it down is the youth. The good thing is that we have a demography where majority of population are youth, but unfortunately we are not taking benefit of it. So this can be a dividend, demographic dividend, or a tsunami if we don't take it properly and if we don't get it there. This is the figure that we have. So the major chunk of population is between the age of 15 and 25 or 30. So there we have. So now if we have opportunities for them, jobs and others, we can get a lot of things. But if you don't, then they are frustrated, and this is comparison of the developed and the developing world. So there is that really thing. This I purposely put this here, that whether there is a link of poverty or terrorism. Yes, there is, because their poverty is exploited, people misuse them. If they don't have any facility, they can just be, extremist people are the cause, just using the name of religion they are used. And ironically, these people, if I look at the case study from Pakistan, the biodiversity rich area, the people are more poor. So if you look at the Human Development Index versus biodiversity rich area, so the rich area people are more poor than the cities and towns. So somehow, if we want to ask them to save the biodiversity, we have to provide them resources. We have to take care of their problems, their education, their food. If we cannot, they will, of course, they will log and they will sell their timber, etc., downtown, and to survive at least for their children. So there is that and again, the good news is, for example, some of our country, Oman, I'm talking about the country Oman, where they are studying the new climate change research center, that this is a very good project that they are thinking and they are working on it, that how can they, reduce the Earth's carbon-laden atmosphere. So these are some of the things that we really cherish and work on. On one side, we were having climate change problem, we were having food insecurity, and now we have COVID-19. It had covered, as in my earlier slides in the beginning, I said its impact on global poverty and nutrition. There's a lot of issues because of the transport, so the increase in the number of poor in millions, it's almost 20% what we call it, the world global. And if you look at the sub-Saharan and South Asia, huge number. That is that we somehow to really equity what is needed, and same is with vaccine. Today, I'm not talking about that subject, but someday we can discuss it. So when we talk about nutrition, poverty, food security, this COVID-19 has impacted poor more, even in the middle class, than the rich got a lot of money out of this crisis and the poor a lot. So for low and middle income countries, we have to consider these issues: movement, physical, financial, social protection, governance and leadership, health, food supply, market and trade, and business. We have to come, we have to work together to address all these issues. And for that, we should have what I call it environmentalism. We have uncontrolled experiment of the only one home, that is Earth. And if we are not taking care of our only home, Earth, we should not expect enjoy peace and security, economic growth, human rights for a long time. We will be having a lot of issues that we will be, problems. So how can we do that? Sustainability and human being as one, if we are really Homo sapien, the same species, so we are trustee and stewards of the planet, of the biological diversity. So we have to ensure sustainability and equity for all the people, and we have to have considered potential of environmental consequences, specifically for vulnerable people. So we need moderation and humility. What I mean by that is that the food waste, if that is saved, today you can feed a lot of poor community in the world. So there is that we really have to somehow the humanity have to collectively develop both material and spiritual. We have to, even if we don't believe in any religion, if we believe in humanity, we somehow need those ethics that are, if we talk about it is unjust to sacrifice the well-being of the generality of humankind and even the planet itself to the advantages the technology breakthrough can make available to privileged minority only. The majorities are not getting benefit from this technological breakthroughs. There is that we need really, our development program should address the humanity at large, the poor community, because the poor are the most vulnerable to climate change, and they are not able to protect themselves. We should consider every human being as a trust, as a whole. The goal of wealth creation should be to make everyone wealthy, and that is voluntary giving is more meaningful and effective than forced contribution. There are some recommendations that can be placed in, because of time, I'll just go quick, that we have to have resilience of food system, specifically in conflict climate change area. We have some actions through understanding of context, strength, inclusive, locally led initiatives, commit to flexible need-based cross-sectorial multi-year planning and financing. We address conflict and political level of the world. Look at today, what's happening, even the last 1 week. So that is where we really, as a scientist, as a human, should, raise voice specifically for vulnerable people that they are things. So if we talk about the agricultural science and technology, food supply, technology transfer, extension, and international cooperation, they are key words that can really help, and that will be a way for zero hunger by 2030 if we want to have those SDGs to be addressed. We really have to work together. Thank you, everybody. I'm grateful that you joined today. And I'm grateful to IES, once again, Pakistan Academy of Sciences, the leadership of both the academies, that they really invited me to talk to you. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Over to you, Brother Abdullah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zabta, for this very interesting and insightful talk, where you smartly linked food security with poverty, inequality, and health. And all of these are connected somehow with the policies and human resource and recommendation of sustainable actions in different sectors, including human resource, agriculture, and other things. It's very insightful. Thank you very much for this very good lecture. Now I would like to open the floor for the audience, the participants, if they have any comments or any questions to be addressed by Dr. Zabta Shinwari.
Hello.
Yeah, please.
Hello. Assalamu alaikum to all. I'm very thankful to the society and Dr. Zabta Shinwari. You shared the very important lecture with us. In Pakistan, have lot of issue to control different diseases. Some major issue is the government not focused to work in education and health, because the education is the major pillar for the control the different diseases. I am working in microbiology and working as an infection control, quality control researcher. There are a lot of ethical work conduct in here in Pakistan. Government not monitorize and no legal situation occur in real situation. I am working in Karachi. Karachi is the largest industrial city. In here, the health practice, lot of unethical health practice occur in here, and no government agencies are bound the physicians, and a lot of cracks and other work in here. So that is a major issue in a larger city, but we go to in some rural areas and other villages, the very poor condition. How can mitigate this situation in Pakistan? And lot of the unemployment occur in here if the students get education, if have no reference and no join the group, though they are not get a good job, and economic condition is very bad. Lot of educated and highly qualified are jobless in this city, and government agencies says to go abroad to leave the Pakistan, and the only government interest to the share to contribute the return the dollars. Not government policies developed to engage these in the brain mindset skilled person to work to develop.
Thank you, Samia. Thank you. We got your message, and inshallah we will address it. I'm really grateful. I'm seeing my seniors, Professor Adnan Badran. I've been to his Just University and other. So let them also talk about all these issues. We learned a lot from him since last 20, 30 years. We worked together. I've been to his places many times. So I'm grateful that they are here today. Samia, we will address your issue and let also they comment. Thank you very much.
Dr. Adnan, please, go ahead.
May I?
Yeah, please.
You know, when we look at the areas or the countries who are suffering from food shortage, I think we have to examine the political system of those countries. Is not really related to agricultural production as much as there is no stability. the stability of the ecosystem needs a stability of a political system also. So politics is very much related to the ecosystem of sustainability in those countries. So I feel that democracy has to go in line with the food shortage in many countries in the world. Civil wars and conflicts really they are very important factors in securing sustainability in availability and distribution of food. For example, when we take the Arab countries where we suffer shortage, we will find that shortage and poverty is very much linked to instability of the political system. Take, for example, Yemen, take Sudan, take now Libya, who is rich in oil and so forth, is suffering also. Syria, Iraq itself, it has a huge reservoir of oil, but because of the political system, unstable political system, they are suffering from poverty. I think also the political system of the Palestinian, because they have instability, they are suffering again from food shortage. So I think really the political environment, it is very important nowadays in having sustainability of food and overcoming poverty. Thank you.
Any more comments? Dr. Shinwari, you want to address the comment of Dr. Samiha?
Yeah, thank you very much, Brother Abdullah. And His Excellency Adnan Badran is usually, thinks global and very good. We work together and I listen to him. He was, in his era, Jordan had a lot of good science and technology development. So he's an, advocate of using science for the betterment of humanity. You are quite right. I endorse your views 100%, Professor, His Excellency Adnan Badran, that two things, if we use political system stability, one, if you look at globally, those countries that are politically stable, they, even with the lesser resources, their population doesn't suffer much. And those who are having problems, they suffer a lot, and we have seen problems in Afghanistan. So you mentioned many, and unfortunately, majority are our Muslim countries. Number two is, as I said earlier, that the countries have policies for science, but we rarely use science for policy, even for political system. If we use science for political system and other policies, luckily in Pakistan Academy of Sciences, we have now a unit of policy that addresses these issues. We are trying, but it's a demand and supply situation. Usually these politicians doesn't want to listen, other than they think good. But you are 100% correct, His Excellency. And we wish that we work together somehow, whatever in our lesser resources we can. In next, I would recommend when we have IAS meeting in Morocco, inshallah, we discuss these issues. We can have some kind of a panel discussion. If you could make some consensus, some document that can be sent to all the members. Luckily, I have with me Secretary General of the Academy sitting. So we can be of source. Thank you very much, His Excellency Adnan Badran, who remained, Prime Minister of Jordan for my young students. They should understand. MashaAllah, did a wonderful job. Over to Brother Abdullah.
Yeah. Any comment or questions?
Yeah, I am okay. I am in full agreement, really. because I share very much with Professor Zabta the things he mentioned. I want to thank him for the giving this seminar. I gained a lot, and I think he has covered the sustainability of food productivity, particularly in the distribution. The distribution chain is very important nowadays. For example, let's take now what's going on in Ukraine. Ukraine is a third country in the world in exporting wheat. For example, in Jordan right now, all our wheat really comes from Ukraine. Now we are suffering because of the shortage of wheat, because of the conflict which is going on in Ukraine. So this is what I say, conflicts and wars really are becoming crucial in securing food, particularly from those countries who are very productive in grain, like wheat and rice and corn, very important nowadays. So I want to thank him really for his giving this lecture to us. We've gained a lot from it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Badran. Any other comments or questions?
Malik Maza has raised his hand, so.
Malik, Dr. Malik Maza, please.
شكرا جزيلا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. I wish first of all to express my gratitude to the Academy for organizing this outstanding event indeed. And I wish also to acknowledge my dear colleague, Professor Zabta Shinwari, for this insightful, inspiring, and comprehensive talk indeed. And as he has mentioned, there are quite a number of points which are common to the South. In fact, they are not limited to a region, but common to the South in general. And I think, and he gave quite a large number of examples of countries where there was instability, where there is still political instability, as Professor Badran has mentioned, in Africa, and being Muslim or non-Muslim. And I think one of the slides that Professor Zabta Shinwari has shared with us, whereby they clearly stated there is at the end a bullet somehow of international cooperation. I think this issue of hunger is common to the South, and the South has a really huge reservoir of know-how and capable youth to drive and scientists to drive this and to tackle this issue somehow. And in my view is that we have not to limit initiatives to the Islamic countries, but to the South in general, and to embark in international cooperation program somehow. For example, Yemen was pointed to many times. Yemen, well, we know what is the situation, and I think with the organizations such as the UNESCO, we were able to host quite a number of fellows from Yemen in South Africa. Yet, indeed, how can I say, it would have been just natural to have Yemeni scientists to go to some countries, partner countries within the region. So, but unfortunately, there were no possibilities. My point, program director and senior colleagues and junior colleagues and participants, is that we should really consider embarking in South-South programs, both from the science, both from the technology, and R&D translations. and using as a platform these young scientists. It is correct, our sister who just made an intervention has pointed to that, and the Prof. Zabta Shinwari showed us the pyramid. In effect, quite a number of countries in the South have the highest youth population. It can be a burden, as it was mentioned, or it can be a positive power to be harnessed somehow. So, simply said, Program Director, my senior colleagues and my junior colleagues and participant, allow me just to mention that it would be sound to create a South-South cooperation program whereby fundings are not a problem. No, fundings are not a problem. We can definitely find a way, a solution for that. But the idea is to create an international program involving more South-South countries to create a cooperation to tackle this problem of fertilizers, for example, green fertilizers, as well as enriching the soil. And this, how can I say, the solutions are science-driven, using this youth that we have. And thank you, Program Director and colleagues.
Thank you, Dr. Malik Mazan. Any other participants want to ask questions or comment?
May I have some comment, Professor Abdullah?
Yeah, Dr. Noor, please.
Okay. I'm very happy that a very good lecture has been given on a very current topic by Professor Zabta, and very extensive. And the comments at the end by Professor Maza are very relevant. We in Pakistan have the central organization COMSTECH, which is meant for South-South cooperation. And I think that is COMSTECH, not COMSTECH. COMSTECH is another organization, but COMSTECH is South-South cooperation, which has been very active for many years. And I think Professor Maza is very right. We should concentrate on South-South cooperation. And there's a lot of we should use COMSTECH as a platform, international platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comment or questions from the participants?
Hello.
Yeah, Dr. Azhar, please. How are you? I haven't seen you for a long time.
Yes, I'm all right. How are you?
That's fine.
Everything's okay?
Yes, great. Great to see you.
That's a good news.
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to say, you know, it's very nice to be in the meeting, you know, because we don't have many meetings at the moment. Sometimes when there's a meeting, it's a prayer, even if the things are not very good around us. So I would be waiting to listen to Dr. Shinwari's speech. I know I don't have any question at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? If not, may I say something about what you have said, Dr. Shinwari?
Yeah, first of all, Professor Asghar, we already finished. I'm sorry, probably you said you will be listening, but we already concluded. If you want me to say, Professor Abdullah, just to close it down, I'm really grateful for my seniors, His Excellency Adnan Badran, Dr. Noor Bhatt, he is a Vice President of our IES and Pakistan Academy Senior Fellow, Dr. Asghar and Malik Maza, we work together, and I totally agree with him. So we take this humanity as a whole, as one unit, as I said, as a trustee, color-blind commitment, irrespective of religion, caste, color, and things. We have to work together somehow to give hand-holding of our marginalized community and Pakistan Academy of Sciences, my Secretary General is sitting just next to me. On their behalf, we commit that we are always with you in your support, whatever event, documentary and others we could do in our meager resources, we will be always there. I'm grateful to Islamic World Academy of Sciences, Dr. Abdullah, His Excellency Adnan Badran, and all the council member and everybody. Thanks for joining. It was great. This is a great initiative. I appreciate. Please keep it up. And I'm really grateful for inviting us for having this kind of interaction. This is really good. And wish to see you again, inshallah, soon, somewhere.
Dr. Shinwari, I have a comment on your presentation. Can I say?
Please go ahead.
I would like to see how you connect what we talk about climate change and COP26 outcome. Because in COP26 outcome, they said that we are heading towards 1.8 centigrade warming on average globally if we stay the course, as it is recommended in the previous COP26 series. Now, it is estimated if we can reach zero emission by 2050, we probably can maybe approach 1.5 increase in warming. However, I noticed, I'm not sure that I get it right from your presentation, that you talk about the issues facing developed and developing worlds. And under the developing worlds, you mentioned the gas emission, the greenhouse gas emissions as a problem. I didn't see that in the developed worlds. As a matter of fact, 90% of greenhouse gas emission have been emitted from developed rather than developing worlds. So it is an issue that is pertained to developed rather than developing worlds. Even the increase of the population in developing worlds would not really have the impact that is being exerted by developed worlds. So I think there is a moral and probably should be a legal responsibility for developed world to cut on their CO2 emissions and pollution, because they are, as you mentioned, rightly mentioned, that their impact on the environment and the ecosystem and biodiversity increase the zoonotic diseases and other pollution that impacted the health of the world at large. Because by doing that, poor countries are pushed to exert a lot of influence and exhaust their natural resources that eventually will affect the global ecosystems. So what do you say about this?
Thank you very much. Let me first explain two things. I also work for UNESCO World Commission for Ethics and Science and Technology. I remain their vice chair. So in that context, I will be addressing whatever you said. First, I second your views are 100% correct, number one. Number two, the slide that you mentioned, I had two components of it. I said, developed world has problems of emitting a lot of greenhouse gases, while developing countries have problems of food security and others, but we are suffering of the climate change because of the problems created by the developed world. Everybody is facing that problem, number one. Number two, when we talk about reducing global temperature, reducing gas emissions and others, developed world is again thinking another venture, which we at UNESCO, COMEST, I call it, World Commission for Ethics and Scientific Knowledge and Technology, we discussed this issue of geoengineering. What they think that they will suck the gases from the environment because they have no technology. They can, spray certain things, and then they can suck the gases and they can reduce the temperature, etc., etc. But the problem is that this is only one home for both of the developed and developing country. We cannot split it. We are facing the problem everybody created by, and then they think that they will do another experiment which can, if go wrong, will have a lot of issues because the impact will be on the whole world. So you are 100% correct that number one, reducing temperature is a big task. We are not sure because since last century we have targets of reducing temperature and reducing emissions, etc. We couldn't succeed because certain new developing countries like China, India, they said you used it for 300 years and now you are asking us not to release gases, etc. It's our turn to grow also. So how can you stop us? So that is the issue that we as a human being have to consider, that what's happening globally, because if this something goes wrong with the whole world, it will go wrong with everybody. But the problem is that the problem created by the developed world, we, the developing countries, suffering more because we cannot afford technologies, we cannot afford shelter, we cannot afford food, we cannot take measures to safeguard our population poor communities. So that's why we are in a trouble of somebody's, that they should, you're 100% correct, they should pay more, they should, as I said, even in Corona pandemic, their wealth increased manifold of some of the individuals, and our majority of the community went down in the poverty. So if they are earning, they should be spending also. Unfortunately, that's also another issue. So I go back to His Excellency Adnan Badran's comment that we as a whole humanity, we have to think about all this. We should have political solution to the problem that I should not be going again into politics, but created by the developed world sometime. You look at Iraq, you look at Libya, you look at wherever you go, you will find things going in a direction from where you can, imagine what happened and why it happened. Same is with Ukraine, same is, this sometimes it seems like a word conspiracy, that they say, no, don't do it. And if they do it, they keep silent in a way that, okay, somebody else is suffering. Like because of Ukraine, it's not only that they have a lot of energy resources. The world is now facing problem of energy. Like you said, Jordan is facing problem of food and many others. So in cut short, two things. Number one, that the developed world has to really consider that whatever they have made wrong to the climate change problem of the world, they have to reconsider it. Number two, while experimenting with new things like geoengineering, we can have another talk on geoengineering ethics, that they should really have safe precautionary approach before doing any experimentation with the world. So that is that we really have to discuss. We are working now in UNESCO on this ethical issues of these frontier technology, I call it, geoengineering and many others. So you are 100%, I support whatever you said, and I clarify the slide that it's not, I said that developing countries are also responsible for greenhouses. Of course, we may be, but not up to that extent that the developed world is responsible. You are right. Our population growth is somehow balanced because of less population in some of the developed countries like Japan, like others. So we export human resource to them in a way, we grow them, we make them healthy and send them, our good brain goes there. So, and cutting it short, I agree with you, but when the target we talk about 2026 and 2030, IPCC and other organization, I also work with IAP and other, we are discussing all these issues, and we really are worried that the developed world has to commit more. For example, signing even CBD and others, if we go again into that direction, United States, it took many years even to endorse the recommendations of all these bodies for safeguarding and reducing the temperature and reducing emissions of the greenhouses. So it's, I agree with you.
Thank you very much.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
No, what Dr. Shinwari is saying is right, but I think we cannot progress if we are talking about all the time about this thing that the developed countries are responsible and the developing countries are suffering. You know, this is true, but we cannot go on talking about this all the time. It doesn't help at all. So we have to be very, 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 very clear that everybody is in the same boat. Everybody in the same boat, the developed country. To not talk about this all the time because this doesn't help at all. Of course, the developing countries and the developed countries have their own needs and their own strategies. So, how to move forward, that has to be considered that we are in the same boat. This is going to be very, very difficult because the countries and the nations, they are what they are, and they have their own strategies and geopolitical needs. So it's very difficult to organize and harmonize all that. This is a basic problem we're facing all the time. And of course, there are limits of the temperature, you know. I wanted to talk this about after the talk, not before the talk. You know, but we should have this increase in temperature for 1.5 degrees, but we are having this 1.5 degrees in the next 10 years, not at the end of the century. So this is going to be tremendous problems, not only for everybody, not for the earth. You know, it's going to create a very fundamental problem for the metrics of life on the earth. Which I mean, metrics of life, I mean, not only the people, but also the trees and the forests and another thing which means metrics of life is going to suffer very deeply because they have limits of the survival. They have brackets of survival. If you go beyond, then they cannot survive. So what I'm saying in a summary, that we have to talk less about this all the time because this doesn't help at all. It is true, but it doesn't help talking about this all the time.
Yeah, any comment, Dr. Bashir Al-Haq? Dr. Bashir, please. Dr. Bashir, you raised your hand.
I have a comment.
Go ahead, please, Dr. Badnar.
May I?
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, very interesting, really, what our friend, Professor, the lecturer said today concerning really the whole atmosphere. Our planet. I think really when you think of it, the disaster we are going to face in the future, whether by climate change, whether by the increase of gases in our atmosphere, and all the tsunamis, the change in temperature, the rise of the oceans, the Nile, the delta of Egypt may disappear within this century if no precautions or nothing is taking place. I think it's about time that our planet, really, our nature, has to ask why some countries, they are free to release carbons, whatever they want, and they are become highly developed, while other countries, they really do not produce pollutants to our atmosphere. I think it's about time that we should force the carbon tax in terms of release of CO2. I agree that when you take China, United States, and probably now India is also joining, those are the countries in the world which are producing the highest pollution to our atmosphere and contributing to the climate change. Why other countries should suffer from the action of those few countries in the world who are polluting the atmosphere of our planet? This is something we should ask ourselves. I think in our Cairo meeting, by the end of this year, the IPCC meeting, where they are going to discuss some of the protocols, I think this should be mentioned. It's about time to tax people who are polluting our planet. I mean, it should not be left. It's something it worries me about the future of our generations in the future, how they are going to deal with this imbalance of nature. I think still politics is so extremely important to come to what I call consensus about preserving our nature and really fighting the climate change. Otherwise, those countries who are getting richer and wealthier on the expense of the rest of the countries in the world should not pass by without any taxing whatever they are polluting to our planet. Thank you.
Any other comment?
Professor Abdullah has some.
Dr. Noor, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's very important. Professor Asghar has made a point. The climate change is one separate problem. I agree with Professor Badran that these excessive emissions by the developed countries are damaging and should be looked. But on the other hand, I think we should look at home. Most of our problems, you will see the political lack of development of our countries is because of the injustice and lack of merit and corruptions which are making our countries not utilizing our resources well. And I think we have to look in politically inside our, we should use our resources of our knowledge. And that's not being done. And that's one very important reason why our countries are underdeveloped. But on the other hand, this is also important. These developed countries are making advantage of this weakness of ours, which our countries, whatever we should do, we are not doing ourselves for developing our countries. We have a lot of resources, the manpower, the individual capability of the individuals of our countries. Particularly in our country, in Pakistan, I can see a lot of potential in the youth. But the political system and internal skirmishes are hindering our progress. I think we should, this is also a very important point which Professor Asghar has made, that we have to look into ourselves. Also, we protect once we are strong and developed because of our own development resources, then we can talk of the international also and will be listened to. Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to add to the comments that been said by Dr. Shinwari, and Dr. Adnan Badran, Dr.
Yes,
and Dr. Asghar. Please, Dr. Asghar, let me say something.
You know, because what I want to say is that scientifically we know what is happening and what should be done. The problem is we have this inertia of indifference around the world. You know, everybody is thinking that, well, somebody else has to do what has to be done, and I wait. So this is the problem, that we have this inertia of indifference, because why is it like that? But things are like this. They are always like that. That you know, everybody thinks that somebody else has to do the job. I will wait for that. This is a problem. And how to overcome this problem? I have to say we have to do this it's very easy to say we have to do this, but it has to be done. That's a problem. We can talk very nicely. We can very, very nicely lot of things, but things have to be done. If you don't do it, then we have a problem, and the problem is there already.
Yeah, Dr. Azhar, we are talking about finding of science, and all states should act according to these findings. Now, let me say something, that the developed worlds are exerting a lot of influence, not only through the emission of their greenhouse gas emissions, but also by inflicting the environment, the global environment, in developing worlds, because they are exporting a lot of primary products from developing worlds, and those countries, because they are poor, they exhaust their natural resources, and as such, affecting the ecosystem globally, like in Brazil or in Africa or Latin America, and this will affect the whole world. We are talking about the responsibility that there is wealth transfer, continuous wealth transfer, because of the externalities done by the developed world on the developing worlds. And this is scientifically proven. Thank you.
This is not surprising, what I've said before, because things are always like that. They have to change. How to change? This is a problem. Because this is what I've said, that this is an inertia of indifference. That while somebody else has to do the job, and we would be all right. This is not true anymore. All of us are involved in the same boat, as I said before.
Yeah, you're right.
If we all of us don't take the responsibility, we are in for a very hard time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Anyway, it was very, very interesting discussions around this topic. And I would like really to thank again Dr. Zabta Shinwari, who brought very, very important issue to the platform. Any other questions before we close up?
Let's have a talk.
You want to say something, Dr. Azhar?
No, I said let's have a talk. Then we'll discuss after that.
Yeah, okay. Well, we have to sign off. Thank you very much, and we expect that you will be present with our third speaker on this series by Dr. Shahid Mansour. He will talk about climate change and sustainable agriculture, which is very much related to what we are talking about. And I hope that you will register for that. We will circulate the information very soon. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.